I have the great pleasure today to have a good friend of mine, Ramin Niroumand, who's the founder of Finleap, the leading fintech ecosystem in Europe, based in Berlin. Ramin founded the company in the summer of 2014. And as being the founder and CEO, he's, amongst other things, responsible critically for the strategy, communications, and group development, as well as acting as the sparring partner, I guess, for all of the heads of businesses, the managing directors and CEOs of the portfolio companies, and the shareholders within Finleap. The premise of Finleap is very simple. I mean, it's to make finance 100% digital. Ramin is also an advisory board member of Solarisbank, that many of you know, one of the portfolio companies from Finleap. Previous to founding Finleap, Ramin was the innovation manager at DKB Deutsche Credit Bank, where he led the bank's electronic and mobile payments innovation projects alongside PayPal, Sofort, and Kringle. He holds a degree in economics, and at the age of 24 was named one of Deloitte Consulting's youngest senior consultants. Ramin was elected by Forbes magazine into the top 30 young shapers of finance in Europe, the 30 under 30, and by Capital, Germany's leading business magazine, as Junger Elite Top 40 unter 40, which I hope most of you will understand, even though in German that was fairly straightforward. Handelsblatt has also named him amongst the 100 smartest people. Oh, Ramin, 100 smartest people in Europe.
I don't know how this happened. I don't know.
No, that's good. They named you. Ramin, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you? All good? Alles gut, I should say.
Alles gut. I already passed COVID myself. You know, I like to be a pioneer. So I think when there were like 50 cases in Berlin, I made it under the top 50 as well.
Oh, so you've already had it?
Another list to hit, yeah. But all good. I'm very happy that I made it through with no further damages, except I cannot smell anymore. So it's sometimes it's very good when you ride the subway in Berlin. It's good that you cannot smell everything, but it will get better soon, I hope.
I hope so. Listen, thank you very much for taking time to be with us. It's wonderful that with these digital technologies, we can make the world a little bit smaller, right? So what I wanted to talk to you about in general is Finleap, how it's going, where it's going, why it's going, where it's going. But let's start then, I guess, from the beginning. How did Finleap get started? What was the idea? What was the concept? What was the vision that you had to build this company?
Okay, so I have to keep in mind that there are people in the room who haven't been there, just like you. I think, Nazi, what have you been? Employee number 3 or so?
I was number 2. You were number 1. I was number 2.
Always makes it up. So for everyone, it was a great time. So how did it all happen? So I met Jan Beckers, and Jan Beckers was already at that time a serial entrepreneur and someone who did company building before. And company building is something, I don't know why, but this is something very German.
Oh, yes.
Probably because the Germans like to put everything, even innovation, into a process. And company building means you start several businesses, and as other people like to produce cars, we produce companies. And it had an advantage that when we talked 2014, the venture capital scene was not by far as developed as it is today. Today we have in Berlin a great ecosystem of startup companies. Why? Because we have exits, and these founders of these companies invest in new companies and so on and so forth. So the circle goes around. But at that time, 2014, it wasn't so easy. When you found fintech companies, and most of you know that you cannot really start it with just a little check and a little bit bootstrapping, because fintech is expensive. It's expensive from a license point of view, it's expensive from a talent point of view, and so on and so forth. So I met Jan. Jan has a great experience in entrepreneurship and company building, but Jan didn't know a lot about fintech. And because of my past studying business information systems and working for all these different firms and this different projects, and also worked as an entrepreneur, I think I had a good understanding what today you would call fintech. At this time, the word was not so much existing, but it was like a good sense of technology, financial services, and so on. And so we met basically for lunch after. I remember very well when I closed the PayPal deal, and it was something, you know, today you see hundreds of corporations of fintechs and banks, but at that time, PayPal partnering with the German bank, I mean, PayPal was already a big firm at that time, 2014, but it was also seen as a threat, because banks very often see everything as a threat. But when I after closing this deal, and ironically, the CEO of PayPal Germany at this time is now the chief digital officer at DKB.
Yeah.
Käse, you know him, I think. And when on the way back, PayPal sits in the suburbs of Berlin, so you need to ride 50 minutes back to the city. And so my boss at the time told me, Ramin, you can't go as fast in DKB as you might need to. You should look into the startup world again. And I was like completely offended why someone who after this
Sounds like he wanted to get rid of you there.
Yeah, it didn't, and in the end, I think it was the best career advice I ever got. And by coincidence, 2 weeks later, my girlfriend at the time, she met Jan and said, and Jan is always curious, always interested in people, and asked, so what is your boyfriend doing? And she says, I don't know, bank and innovation, talk to him. And this is how it started. And why did we start it in company building? Because company building at that time was able to raise funds with significant money for starting fintechs and attracting talents who wanted to do more, just like you. And I think it was a good starting point for Finleap, because early on we had the combination of entrepreneurships, industry know-how, and technology, and that made us quite unique. I mean, you remember, I think from our first 10 hires, the average age probably was 40.
Yes. I was the second oldest person for a very, very long time at the age of around 40. I remember that. Yeah.
And it was not that it only were young kids, right? It was a good mix of people and talents and what today we call it diversity. Diversity obviously is not just men and women, it's age, backgrounds. This is how we started, and from a company builder, we developed to an ecosystem.
Yep. Well, look, I think I've lost track, I have to admit, Ramin. You guys, there's so many. I remember in the early days, we launched like 8 or 9 businesses within about 12, 13 months. How many businesses has Finleap now launched in total?
I think launched, we have something around 18 companies.
Yeah.
A few of them, 2 of them are other corporate ventures, so we put them in a different category. A few of them we merged, a few of them we sold. Today we have 10 companies in the portfolio, where most of them we have built it, except 2, Crossland, where we have a stake, is also very active. Everybody knows in Luxembourg. Very glad and know Oliver since a very long time. And the second one is Penta, where I would say we have partially built it. We have taken it over in a time where the business was doing very well. The structure was to be optimized, and we optimized this, and now it's a very, very good growing businesses on top of Solarisbank.
Yeah, and you kept Marco there as well, right? So that's good.
We brought Marco there, so we have our first ecosystem serial entrepreneur, so a founder who did 2 businesses, or a manager who did 2 businesses.
I was trying to help him raise some money for the funding round recently. He's always a good guy, Marco. So listen, so you've launched like 18 odd businesses. I mean, what was the process that you go through? I mean, that's a lot of companies. And as I say, particularly, I remember in that first 18 months, we launched like 9 or 10. The record we had was, you and me tried to get, was 43, 45, right? We always had debates about it. 45 days, 43 days to launch a business. How did you come up with the concepts? How did you manage to execute so rapidly? And which of these businesses are you most proud of in terms of the ideas?
I think most proud of, I'm always about, and I think the most differentiating factor, and always because why we were good in execution, is the people. So I'm more proud of founding certain talent and place the talent there, and then see how the business grew with this talent. Yeah. So you were there when we founded Clark, and Clark was this super fast, I mean, from the idea to license, started business. And this is very proud to say that from the 4 founder team, and in the beginning 3+1, you can say, because the one guy came a little later, Chris Lotte, still 4 are there. The company is 5 years old. They have a super CEO with Christopher Oster. They have super team, Marco, Stefan and Chris, and then they added more components to it. I never saw a business plan like this. Like, they're always on the line, they're always precise, and so I'm more proud of the people, and I'm proud because Clark is a great example, because Christopher Oster, Jan, and I myself, we knew, let's say, from the Berlin startup world. The CTO Stefan was a referral from another CTO, Roman Leicht, at the time company. You remember?
Yeah.
And Marco Abel applied. And so from the 3 founders, we had all the 3 ways Finleap attracts talent referrals, active hunting, and applications. We got them together and we brought a team together, which is strong. And this is something which I'm most proud of when it comes to people. How did we choose it? I mean, it was always the three main pillars were always the business model, so the talent, the business model, and the fundability. And the fourth one, which now, and this is when you see in the beginning, we were very opportunistic about building companies, which we thought is great and having the right people running it. But today we added the component of an ecosystem. So how is it synergetic to something? How do we have an unfair advantages to us, right? And when we can build it. And that sometimes is also interlinked with the fundability. So in some cases, we partnered up with investors right away to have some unfair advantages in the grow up phase. But of course, also in the choices, I think we made, as all the time in 6 years, you do a lot of mistakes as well. And I think also most of the mistakes were also linked to people, the wrong people on the wrong spots, and not so often to the business model. I'm very happy that this one business model we worked a lot on, we shut down. We worked a lot on the business case. So this is also something we learned. It was at this time, I think we can disclose it, it was a B2C robo-advisor.
Oh, yes. And he went off and did it anyway, but yes, no, but I mean, it was obvious it wasn't going to work, right? And you know what, to this day, it still probably wouldn't work. The costs, I mean, being in Luxembourg with the fund center, the costs of doing the processing is just way too high, way too high. No, I get, but I mean, the people thing, it has always been critical. I mean, this is always a very difficult thing. How do you identify, and I think myself being with Finleap, it helped me a great deal. How do you identify the right person? Because, I mean, I've been there, let's be honest. There were a lot of misses. There were some very good hits.
Yeah.
How have you progressed in terms of being able to know that this person is the right person for a startup?
You know, I would love to tell you that since then we have this super engineered process and I press a button and then comes the perfect talent out of the process, out of the funnel, and it's always a hit. It's still very personal. It's still a huge component of luck. Of course, you can help with a lot of the things. Like, first of all, like always, experience helps you, right? Like you have seen so many hits and misses, as you're saying, which haven't worked. You see, and you get a pattern what fits to which business model. This is something. Then another one is, of course, a bigger brand helps you with a more open, making the pool even bigger. Processes helps you that we invested quite a lot in more active sourcing. So we're not only waiting for application. I think 2/3 of all our hires are actually referrals or active sourcing. When I say active sourcing, we work like headhunters. Yeah. So we have a team of sourcer, and it's a very staged process, screening LinkedIn, bringing people in the process, and so on and so forth. We changed also a little bit more to giving people a little bit more, having them a little bit more than we used to be on the trial period. So, and this role like venture partner or consultant, and see how hungry they really are. So a big problem as a company builder sometimes is you attract people who say they want to be entrepreneurs, but they are not. Yeah. And this hungriness we try to kill more, or to find out more. You also might remember that we used to do 2 offers, one with less shares and one with more shares.
Yes, of course.
The one with less shares, we said, no, it's not gonna go. And this, unfortunately, we'll never do anymore, but this was a very good proof, a very good test, and you can test it in different ways as well. But it's still a big portion of luck. But again, so what really helps you is the bigger pool, the bigger experience, and it's hard. Company building still is hard, and that's why startups are not always successful, and that's why we also will have a lot of misses. I think it helps to, as a company builder, what you can do best, you can compensate weaknesses on talent by having some back office functions, some access to a network, some experience. And I try to focus rather on the strengths of this person. So the 1 or 2 super skills this person has, a very good leader, doesn't need to be the best fintech expert, and so on and so forth. This is something we try to convey. And yes, and and to a certain degree, but also as more complex and unsexy the business gets, the people really, really value our access to businesses. So I think business development asset we have, this is a big game changer for a lot of people joining and want to join. And a lot of people don't want to do everything by their own. And so we are grateful that we get now experienced fintech entrepreneurs. At that time where we started Finleap, there were no fintech people, right? Like I mean, you were everyone who already worked in a fintech before, but now you have these people who have been working in 3 fintechs before. Like,
yep. Well, I remember the way I used to look at it was we had the younger guys who I looked at as bullets from a gun, right? You point them in a direction and they had to have that execution focus. And then it was about mixing the gray hairs, you know, some people who had a little bit of know-how, experience, be it in finance or as leaders, to be able to motivate those young people to move them forward. I also remember, I don't know if you do this anymore, that we used to have a bit of a policy to take senior guys out for a drink. And do you remember that guy who we made an offer to and then ripped up his contract after he got drunk? Do you remember that? The Indian guy from the UK. He behaved like a complete arse when we went to a bar with us and we ripped up his contract. We didn't want to hire him. Anyway, he had some good times. So, I mean, you talked about the people being key elements of success. You talked about the business model, etc. I mean, how do you know that a business model is the right business model? I mean, how do you know that could potentially be successful?
Yeah. So lately, I try to differentiate in business models where I see a lot an innovation risk and an execution risk. So as a company builder, like the typical company builders, right? You have maybe who build the copycats, right? They usually go after business models where you just have an execution risk. So you know the business model theoretically works because someone else has done it and you execute it better. Finleap has done, maybe in hindsight, it's too many business models with innovation risk, but we clearly have done a lot of them with an innovation risk as well as an execution risk, because every startup has an execution risk. And then I will also answer your question shortly, but let me differentiate. And I think on the execution risk is, we have 2 businesses like Clark, as I mentioned, and also Pairfinance and the digital debt collection. So first of all, okay, they have great founding teams, they have great CEOs and so on and so forth, but they are also business models which in the traditional world work. So digital insurance or an insurance broker earns money today. They earned money 5 years ago, they earned money 4 years ago, and so on and so forth. Debt collection is a business model which works. Like in the traditional businesses, they earn good money. So if you execute these 2 businesses much better and completely digital with like some new mindset, new data strategy, and so on and so forth, you're good to decide. You're good to go. So I'm not so much, and this is something where after these business models, you can search quite systematically. So you can go around and say, okay, what is with financial services? Where are the profit pools today? And so on and so forth. And if you have that, you have the profit. Then ideally, if you say, okay, these are business models, the profit pools are already in financial services, which one of those business models are very operational heavy? So when you look about, again, debt collection, it's a very operational process. Same with Clark, insurance broker, if you do it right, if you get the understanding of the central insurance right, the whole consulting is the whole process from giving an advice to booking it is very operational. So you can look at this. I give you another example where it doesn't work that much, unfortunately, yet, and we talked about this business model also in the past, investment banking. So digital investment banking is a business model, but from a pure profit pool point of view, of course, we need to build tomorrow digital investment bank. But it's still too handmade. It's not so much in the process. Probably you could do it, but there are big boys who don't want to do it. And still, you know, for many people, big fundraise or big IPO or big sale or even smaller IPOs or smaller fundraise, very often it's the deal for their life. So they don't want to risk it to go with a startup. I mean, let's be honest. If we would meet in a year and I have the chance to build with your digital investment bank you just started 12 months ago to go for whatever, a big fundraise, and next to you is JP Morgan, even you cost a quarter of it, who would I go with, right? And this is the thing, that some way we need to start that. So profit pools, operational And then there's just the execution risk. And if you combine, let's say, profit pool operationally heavy, because digitalization helps a lot on the operations. If you combine it with good talent, then this is one, let's say, one funnel which works good. So on the innovation risk, it's obviously a little bit more difficult. I think one, as we do a lot of B2B business models, then I think there's a good estimate just being connected in the industry, right? So SME banking, I hear it since 2.5 years. Everybody is saying, oh, one big problem of my company is SME banking, right? So if everybody says this from an industry point of view and you want to offer them solutions, there's a good way that you can tweak a solutions for them. Then the problem is that if you find a solution which maybe helps all these 5 partners on the B2B side, what is the company to serve this purpose for them? And one big mistake we did in the last 6 years is probably we built it up too many feature companies. So we built a company which solves one feature, like switching from one bank to the other. But this is then an IT provider for the bank, which is great, which is good business model, software as a service, all good. But the next business model, if you then also start a company again, you have to build up so much central functions. You can also say overhead, but so much necessity of risk processes, of compliance processes, on data knowledge, that it's not worth anymore to build for every new solutions or product a new company. And that's why we merged all our companies in the field of B2B software, non-licensed, under the umbrella Finleap Connect. And now within Finleap Connect, we built the small solutions where you solve pain points from actual customers.
Yeah, so it's a platform offering, essentially.
It's a platform offering, thank you. And so this is a different way of building solutions. So we're still a builder, but we build on different levels. We're building solutions within Finleap Connect. We build ventures with Finleap Build still, which kind of have to be then either in this first bucket I said, or in the second bucket, which is then really a clear white spot where it's a platformification. But there's also then the third bucket where you can now combine all the different assets and build completely new thing. I think one thing also we talked in the past about is a new bank for doctors. And now we have on Finleap Connect, we have an SME banking suite, and Solarisbank, we have the bank under it. We have Element for the insurances for the doctors and the patients. And you could add Elinvar for the wealth management for the doctors. So you can use the building blocks we have in the ecosystem to build completely new ventures. And that's something as a third pillar where it will go, clearly. And yeah, so again, it's, and the other, still, I think it's very fair to say, yes, we have the idea funnel, we have all the different stages as you would have in already PowerPoint, but it's also about trying out. And the good thing is about the Finleap Connect stuff, small solutions you can easier try out. You remember also from the past, in banking and financial services, to build just an MVP, it's not that easy because you need the license, you need the data privacy, and so on set up.
Yep.
So
I mean,
we have some questions coming in.
Yeah, I'm going to get to those in a second. I've got a couple more I just want to ask you, just for clarity, which I should have asked before. I mean, how many people are you now employing over all these portfolio companies?
A little bit more than 1,100.
1,100. So you're a proper company now. Eh? So I mean, look, Ramin, you know, you've done fantastically well. You're a young man still, yeah, 30 years old still?
33, I turned on Thursday.
Oh my God, 33.
35, and then you're 40.
33, managing 1,100 people. Fantastic.
It's not all my people, you know that. It's all the different companies.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, still, you are the umbrella at the top. And I mean, I've noticed the changes in terms of management and strategy, etc. But tell me a little bit about your sort of journey in terms of going from, you know, you, me, and then a few others gradually in a room sitting next to each other on desks to now running a portfolio of companies with 1,100 people. What changes have you gone through yourself in terms of the way you lead and the way you manage these businesses?
Well, this is a deep question.
That's a deep, you know, I like deep questions, Ramin, so come on.
So you remember when we started, I was, technically speaking, I was not even managing director right away, right? Like, and I remember So I was employee number one, and it was all part of the founding team and founder and so on and so on. Because there were like so many old guys, no, not old guys, but Jan. Like it has had to do a little bit with our structure. I was not managing director right away, and then I remember our very first fundraising, and it was 5 million on just a piece of paper. Yeah, and a 5 million piece of paper. Wow, that is something to do. But gladly, Jan had a fantastic network, a fantastic entrepreneur, and we could build up of it. And he himself and his company at that time did the biggest chunk of the first investment. However, I also went out raising, and I was 20. I just turned 27, and I was not. I mean, I never did really fundraising before. And I remember I never forget this. We were crossing the streets. I think we were eating lunch at Dolores.
Yeah.
Mexican shop right across the street, bistro. And on the street, you said, Ramin, why do you put in all your family network? Yeah, because I was even raising for my uncle and my father and so on. And you, with more experience, you said, you know that you can lose all the money with the startups, right? And because you have seen more, let's say, horses dropping. And I mean, maybe I was too young and naive, but I was also so convinced that something good will happen. And then we managed to raise from, gladly, not only family, but more importantly, we raised also from business angels, Matthias Sola and Gerrit, the managing director of Klarna at the time. And we managed to raise early on a sheet of paper from really good, experienced people. The CEO of Money Bookers and so on. So really, really cool. And that was the first, that helped me then also to grow, that you could convince such an experienced managers about investing in an idea, more or less. Okay, Jan, again, his experience, his background, his commitment helped a lot. Clearly.
Which we need to put into perspective. He was 32 at the time, right?
He was 32 at the time, and was already a very successful entrepreneur.
Yep.
So that obviously helped a lot, and that was a big leap, right? A big kickstart. But then becoming managing director quite early then, and you know, we had this Jochen working for us.
Jochen Siegert, yes.
Jochen Siegert, and he came with the big CV, managing director. I don't know what was he? Ex-PayPal, director, business development, PayPal, MD, Bigpoint, and Mastercard, and like the CV was with all the glory. And then he left, and I stepped sort of in, and yeah, it was a personal growth, because I was the only 100% Finleap MD, because the other two MDs were from the mothership. And what I never expected, then I think I became CEO after 3 years or so, and it was for me quite surprising, and from a personal growth point of view, that obviously these always steps, right? When you get promoted, there's steps, but the CEO didn't really felt like it doesn't internally, or for me, it doesn't really felt like a promotion, because it was.
You were running Finleap anyway. So
I was running Finleap anyway. But suddenly the 3 letters did such a big change, because Jan and Henrik officially laid down. I mean, they're more or less exiting already, but they officially laid down. And you know, there's sentences like, oh, this is a CEO job. Oh, this is a CEO task. No, this needs the CEO to be solved. There is no saying this needs the managing director to solve. Yeah, there's nothing like this. Yeah, and this was again for me where I saw it's a little bit more focused on you, and I was glad that I was still able then to build a team and put people on my side. But yeah, personally, I grow, and I just had the discussion this morning actually with one of my coworkers, because of the whole COVID situation. I'm now sitting in the office space for 100 people, but there are only 10 people. And for me personally, it's very sad, because I think part of our culture is this very close collaboration and this close working together. And I'm still, what excites me the most is still winning clients, not for the sake of clients, because we build a product which convince others to use and to work with. And I like to go very, very close on the product and work on the product and so on. I know I don't have that time anymore, but it was easier when you just go by, could sit next to someone, look at, give you insight, give you sparring. And now I really miss the connections to, let's say, the wider group, because that was always, I think, personal strength of me to say having these connections to the wider group just because of it being present, working around, knowing a lot of people, knowing a lot of history, knowing a lot of legacy. And that helped obviously to grow and stabilize. And now we sit in a very virtual world where obviously you speak with your peers, you speak with your direct reports, you speak in the necessary boards, but the in-between management is difficult. And for me, again, coming a little bit back to your question of the personal growth, I hope I got a little bit calmer over time, a little bit less, but hopefully not less emotional, yeah, less expressive, and yeah, definitely heavier over time. But
you're married now, so it's
I already married.
Yeah, you're exactly. It changes things. I saw when Stefan got married, I mean, he became a completely different person. When he had a kid, my God, what the hell happened? When I saw him, I was like, this is not Stefan, it's a doppelganger.
So, yeah, I think personal growth, of course you grow, right? And I think it's, for me, it's most important that every day I go with a smile in the office and have fun. Of course, it's difficult to manage so many stakeholders all the time with the same level of commitment I'm used to do. But this is something I still need to learn the right balance when I should interfere and when not. And I think this is very, very, very founder driven. I'm a little bit have the advantage that the Finleap group is not as big as these 1,100 people, and I have great other leaders and very experienced leaders next to me. But and this is something which I'm still learning, and it's good to learn from the portfolio CEOs also. But it's an interesting learning curve. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've learned a lot, and you've done a fantastic job at it, Ramin. So there are some questions. Let's get Dan on the line. Dan Fahini. Dan, are you there? Anthony, are you going to put Dan on, or should I do it? I'm letting you do it, Anthony, if you're still listening. Is he going to do it? There we go. Dan's online. There we go. Dan, unmute yourself, and you had some questions for Ramin.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Dan.
Couple questions. One was, how do you compare to Rocket Internet? It seems like a very different story altogether. And obviously Rocket Internet is more widely in the SaaS space and sort of retail and consumer. Second question, when you get past a good product and you have a good tech stack and you've got a good story, what's the most important? I've run across several fintechs. I'm in the fintech space about 5 years. And I've run across several fintechs that don't really have any banking practice or knowledge, or have never heard of, the whole process of insurance claims and underwriting. And so how do you, when you run across that, do you sort of plug in someone from the financial services space to plug those gaps, or do you let them kind of figure it out on their own? It's a tricky question, that second one.
Yeah. Okay, how do we differentiate from Rocket? I mean, Rocket is admirable how they built up this universe of technology companies by now, and it's something really great, let's say, for Berlin, Germany, and Europe. We are differentiating. I think by now they're really an asset management company, so they're putting the chips in real estate and bigger companies, and they're an asset management company. They're a growth fund and real estate investors. They're not so much building anymore. They used to build also, and they used to build with the good ability of fundraising, but also the very good ability of digital business models, e-commerce business models, and execution power. Finleap was from the first day on very focused only on fintech, so that's a big differentiator, that we were industry focused only. All the other companies built it were, let's say, digital but not industry focused. That helps also a little bit to answer your second questions, by the way, that we have a lot of this industry know-how at the group. And I think you can actually not build a good product market fit without industry know-how. Either you build it up and learn it very quickly. It's a little bit easier on the retail side. That's why you have a lot of neobanks founded by non, let's say, banking experienced people, because it's more about the usability, and the banking processes are not that complicated in the beginning, you think. As longer as you go, you need the right experience. So industry focused, I think a little bit more also the heavy lifting from a licensing and build up part. Definitely not fast growing as Rocket Internet companies. Again, depends also a little bit, it's very highly connected to the fintech industry itself. Not yet the funding amount, and not controlled by someone like Oliver Samba anymore. So Oliver Samba, the founder and entrepreneur, is still the operating CEO, which is, I think, a great asset for Rocket Internet. It's very, again, admirable what he does for the firm and how much he grew that. In our case, it's a little different. That the company belongs mostly to the shareholders and with a small part to us founders, but we run it with the same heart, but not with the same, let's say, financial and entrepreneurial alignment as Rocket Internet can.
If you don't mind, Ramin, if I could add a few. That need to be taken to get a company live. What we discovered at Finleap quite early on, Ramin, you remember do you remember that Spanish guy who came in trying to, you remember the guy, the ex-McKinsey guy, right?
He tried to sell us a consulting project.
Exactly.
Professor, yeah.
So we thought at the beginning we could come up with a very prescriptive model to build businesses. But what I think we realize is that you need much more flexibility with fintech. And that also held true because Rocket, trying to build a few fintech firms, failed miserably, quite honestly. You remember they had a few and they shut them down because they couldn't do it. You can't apply the same prescriptive model that Rocket, which still uses this manual, to build a retail business like you can a fintech business. There's too many moving parts. There needs to be a little bit more openness in how you approach, which is again why it's a bit trickier with the people side, because Rocket just hired ex-consultants en masse who would just execute this manual. That was one of the big differences to me between Rocket. And as Ramin said, they've become an asset management company. You know, Ramin, there are 2,000 companies over here in Luxembourg. They have this special little team that manages all of their companies here in Luxembourg, right? 2,000 companies. So that was really, to me, one of the biggest differences. And also on the B2B side, in terms of know-how, as we said earlier, you know, we always hired, I remember even for every one of the businesses we built at the beginning, Ramin, we always brought in one guy, at least one guy, if not two guys from the industry, right? You remember, well, Marco was an obvious one with Solaris. Then the other Marcos for insurance, for the Elinvar, etc., etc. There was always a guy who knew the business inside out.
So we had a lot of industry expertise, and I think there's another question in the chat which is a little bit related to it. Are we open to external ideas? So far, we always have started our own businesses. We are very open to external founders, of course, because cannot do it by ourselves, but the ideation process goes very much on Finleap, and there we make sure that we involve all the different industry expertise. So now when we started an asset management company, we for sure had someone who worked at a wealth management company before, or who has an asset manager. Oh, we know. We would never start a company, I think, purely with technologists, not with no industry expertise in the firm, right? Yeah. So. But yes, more and more lately, we're more and more open to external ideas. It depends a little bit how synergetic they are to our overall ecosystem and how much we need to support them and spend them.
Ramin, I mean, COVID-19 has made a lot of traditional finance leaders sort of wake up and realize the importance of digital. So it's a profound moment in many ways, both negative and positive. I believe positive for the fintech industry going forward, particularly in B2B. But I mean, in your own reflections, as I'm sure you've taken some time, what are you thinking about differently now, given what you're seeing and experiencing and the way that the world will change maybe in the months and years to come? Has that impacted your thinking about things that Finleap should be doing, new products, new services, new business model, anything like that?
So in general speaking, I mean, we're obviously very gladful that we do a lot of B2B fintechs. And for B2B fintech, the pressure on digitalization increased heavily. and that is overall, for example, on the side, it's good. How I think differently, I think I saw more and more that processes needs to be end to end. So, I mean, this is obvious, right? You see this on every McKinsey PowerPoint, that you need to do end-to-end presentations of end-to-end processes. Sorry, but now when you have the real issue, if it's only a small signature, yeah. So I give you an example. We had to close a deal, and the notary needed to come to my house because I was in quarantine. I couldn't leave the house, so the notary needed to come to my house, needed to put the paper on the doorstep, needed to go a step back. I needed to go to the doorstep. I needed to sign it inside, needed to lie it on the doorstep again. And this is you don't go to a notary every day, but there's hundreds of different other cases where we need to have true end-to-end use cases. And this is my argument about feature ventures before is still true. If you look at the whole game of a good friend of us, Nikolai Skachkov, is has building now his own fintech circular, and is doing very well. But he's doing expense management. But so you have a great tool for expense management, but how is it connected to your HR tool? And then you have great Personio tool. And so how do you connect a complete end-to-end digital finance process? Because this is what solves the problem. It doesn't help you when the expense process is completely digital, but a lot of other, like the payout, is not, right? So I'm thinking about that you have all the bricks, you have all the tools, you have all the building blocks. There is a tool for everything right now, but there's not enough end-to-end processes. And that comes a little bit to the question, do you need a business expertise? Shit, yes, you need business expertise, because you need business process intelligence. And I'm thinking a lot about that right now, how we can really solve business process. And where does the business process stop? Because you obviously, when I look at this, you run the risk that you do another tool for this edge case, another tool for this edge case. So where do you stop? What is an 80-20 good enough business process you can digitalize to really solve this thing? This is one way I look from a business model perspective to it. I clearly look on it that it's, and then you said it in our pre-briefing, what I really liked, because you do it always, you put it always in much better words than I can ever express it. But that's why you were in charge of also communication-wise. But this can-do mentality. Now, finally, people realize that it's actually worth doing a meetup completely digital, that it's actually worth not, I mean, how do everyone says, right? COVID is the best thing for the nature, is better than Greta. Yeah? COVID is the better Greta. And there are some aspects of this. So this is nice to see that people say if they have to, they can actually do it. I also think that the world will get even more transparent, right? So the internet already made us everywhere transparent. When we buy a financial service product, which we can compare, like a car insurance or like a household insurance, then we go to an aggregator. Not all the time, but let's say this.
Not in Luxembourg, I tell you that. They have too much market power. No aggregators here.
Yeah, but then they have market, and that will, but because you cannot see personal people, it will be hard and changing for people who don't have the best product, but maybe the best sales force and the best relationship to sell a product, because product transparency will even increase across all verticals. It is already in B2C starting, right? Like how do you buy a TV? You don't go to a shop and you like the salesman very nice, right? You Google, first of all, what are good TVs? Then you go to...
I've got to admit, I didn't today. I bought a TV today, Ramin, and I just went into the shop and I said, I'll have that one.
You don't care, Wow, there's always that cases as well, I think. Thanks for ruining my example, but...
But I get where you're going. Usually I would do it exactly the way you described. I was time constrained today. Yeah. Listen, I'm going to let Alex from my team who wants to ask you a question. I'm going to allow him to talk. There you go. Alex, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks, Nas. I'm cleaning dishes right now, so I don't expect to talk, but thank you, Nas. So question for you, Ramin. I mean, you talk a lot about B2B and you guys are developing the best fintechs for that. Why not Finleap Luxembourg? I mean, we are the best for B2B. I understand that talent is in Berlin, but it's here that the business is happening. What's your intake? And if not Luxembourg, do you have any strategic expansion in mind? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's not that we're not in Luxembourg. So I can now say, because we have a stake in Crossland. Crossland is a Luxembourg.
And Elinvar pop over quite a bit as well.
Pop over quite a bit. We have one guy now working in Paris. We have 3 guys working in Madrid, 20 guys working in Milan. See, Luxembourg is on our radar as on the whole, let's say, investment banking heavy side. So the whole, there we have Elinvar and Crossland, so the businesses go there. Could we do more there? Yeah, yes, probably we can. And I hope when I can travel, I will visit my friend Nazir again, and then we do some meetings there. No, I no particular reason against Luxembourg. I think you need to decide one day how many offices you have and how many businesses we can do. And yes, one of the businesses, and we're speaking about profit pools again before. I think a lot of businesses who are in Luxembourg have still good profit pools in the asset management space. But when it comes there to execution, I believe you have to bring a lot of either capital or infrastructure know-how and so on. I believe that the hurdles to jump into these kind of businesses are quite high, and you need to find the right maybe it's also because I don't have the right talent, right? Maybe I don't have the right fund manager who comes with an idea. I want to build exactly this digital fund manager product, and let's do it in Luxembourg, right? This is also, I mean, you maybe want to, my new chief of staff who will start in July is actually a lawyer by training. She's a salary partner, Taylor Wessing, Leah. I don't know if you know her, Leah.
No, I don't think I met her.
She used to be the head of legal from Crossland, and she knows a lot about capital market and financial markets construct. So we will look in these business models a little bit more, and clearly visit then also Luxembourg.
Cool. Thank you very much. That was a very diplomatically astute answer there, Ramin. See, you can say, you know how to say things too. Right. I think one last question, if that's okay with you, Ramin, from Neja. Neja, let's bring you live. I think I can do that. There we go. Neja, unmute yourself. Off you go.
Thanks for this really interesting talk. My question is more, when you, Ramin, when you mentioned about the end-to-end process, I really want to understand if, according to you, it can be done only through an ecosystem. Because, I mean, it's difficult for one fintech to do the end-to-end process entirely, I would say.
I think this is the best question I ever got, because it's the best. No, it's a really, really good question, because it's a very good advertising for an ecosystem, right? I totally agree with you, Naja. The biggest challenge for me is that the individual money sits with individual companies. So you need to join forces and alliances with people who not have 100% aligned interests. So the difference between an ecosystem and a corporate is, even a corporate can have many holdings, right? But an ecosystem is something where the individual part, in our case, the firms, are self-standing. They have different shareholder structures than we have. They have their own business model, they have their own management, their own talent, their own brand. And we as Finleap need to make sure that there's somehow a synergy effect which is greater than the individual contribution. And this is then when an ecosystem works. But sometimes, and still physically in rough times, it's not so easy to create that feeling, because in the first step, when I go now to company A and say, you need to company with B, because then it comes out C, then A asks me what is in for A, and B asks me what is in for B. And I sometimes then have to create C first and then see the advantages. But I totally believe in ecosystem, and that the unfortunate thing in Europe is that we don't have ecosystems yet, not big ones. We have small ones like ours, which can become big, but the big ecosystems outside of Europe are controlled by one person, either by Jeff Bezos or by Jack Ma, so Alibaba or Amazon, or Google. They created this ecosystem, how their ID, your personal ID can now work with all your company enterprise software from Google and so on and so forth. But I believe the best place for an ecosystem is Europe, because Europe is so fragmented that no one will make it alone. and we need to work together jointly. But the problem is our individual greed needs to step more sometimes back, and someone needs to take care about the above synergy.
Yeah. Well, I think on that point, it's a good point to end, because I think we're now seeing this at a macroeconomical level. I mean, what you said rings home true. We talked before the call about, you know, how all these financial services firms are individually looking at reducing headcount or going work from home, but on a macro basis, that could be a disaster in many ways, right? You know, and yeah, people become much more insular in this situation. I mean, the fact that the borders have closed down is a, you know, and this is, I mean, you know, we talked, Ramin, about how much I love Luxembourg, and that was one of the main reasons I like this place, is because genuinely in normal times, and even to some degree now, we see fantastic collaboration. Sometimes people are willing to make a little bit of sacrifice on an individual micro basis to work for the greater good of the whole, right? Which is what, as you said, to me defines an ecosystem. Listen, we've spent a lot of time together, Ramin. I could talk for you for ages. I miss you, my friend. I hope to eventually we'll catch up very soon. Thank you very much for being online. Thank you for everyone for listening in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Ramin, best of luck, best of care. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope to see you soon. All right.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.